After months of hype, the Battlefield 6 beta is finally here, and well, I've been giving it a try. I'm going to give you my thoughts about what I think is good and what I think could do with some improvements going forward, because at the end of the day, we are still 2 months away from launch. And before we get into this, I know I'm coming from a predominantly Call of Duty background. However, I have an ungodly amount of player time on Battlefield 1942, Battlefield Bad Company 2, and Battlefield 3, and also a fairly decent amount of time on Battlefield 1. So I know what makes a good Battlefield game, although I do predominantly play Call of Duty. Anyway, sit back, relax, and enjoy. So we'll start with the elements of the gameplay that I'm really enjoying, and first and foremost, Battlefield has lost its way a little bit in recent years. However, this game, Battlefield 6, in particular, feels like a Battlefield game. The gameplay foundation is very, very solid. It feels like it's harping back to the Battlefield 3/Battlefield 4 days, and you know what? I'm all here for it because it feels very, very different to the first-person shooters that are on the market to this day. Now, one of the key elements of a first-person shooter game is the gunplay, because, well, that's obviously the core of the game. And in Battlefield 6, the guns actually feel pretty good to use. There is a little bit of weapon bloom, which I don't really like, obviously coming from a Call of Duty background. However, that has always been in Battlefield, so it is to be expected if you're going to try and pick up and play this game. With the time to kill as well in the game, it's actually very, very quick. It feels like you're playing a hardcore mode. I will say that, for me, I wish it was a little bit slower. However, because the time to kill is so quick, every gun kind of feels viable in different situations, and because of that, it actually makes it a little bit fun. Now, sticking on with the theme of the gunplay, the sniping in Battlefield 6 is this game's chef's kiss. Let me tell you, this is probably the most satisfying thing about this game, purely because it actually requires a little bit of skill. There is a skill gap there. Also, the fact of the matter is that if you shoot someone in the chest, they don't actually die. It's not one shot to the chest like Call of Duty is. You actually have to hit the head, and therefore it's very rewarding. Also, when you do hit them in the head, there is no sort of enemy revive once you down them. They're actually fully dead, and they've got to respawn back in. There's no chance for them to be revived, which I'm really big fan of, that feature. And speaking of enemies going down, there's actually a feature in this game where you can drag and revive enemies at the same time to get them out of the firing line. I hope that feature makes it into the Battle Royale that we're going to see later this year, hopefully. Fingers crossed anyway on that, because actually it's a pretty cool feature to have. Final few points about the gunplay in Battlefield 6 that I noticed. First of all, the aim assist feels actually very balanced in comparison to Call of Duty sticky aim assist. Now, obviously, as I said, I'm predominantly a Call of Duty player. I'm all for that. However, I still feel like the aim assist is very, very strong in Call of Duty, and it needs to be toned back a bit. In this game, however, I actually feel like it's quite balanced and quite fair. I actually tried a game on keyboard and mouse, which is something I never really do, and I was winning gunfights. It felt like I was actually, being able to be competitive using a keyboard and mouse as opposed to just using a controller. So it looks like we're going to get a nice balance for Battlefield 6. And the weapon customization system in this game is actually pretty simple to use as well, once you actually find it. I'll touch on that a little bit later on. However, in this game, you typically have 100 points to spend per weapon on all these different attachments. So a stock that might reduce recoil drastically might cost something like 30 points. And therefore, you've got 70 points to play with for things like muzzles or sights or extended mags, all that kind of stuff to build these guns out. And I can't believe I'm going to say this, but we've actually kind of got a pick 10 system in Battlefield before we've got it back in Call of Duty. Wild. The movement in Battlefield 6 for me is kind of a mixed bag. I will touch on sort of the things I don't like when I do the bad aspects of the gameplay. However, for the good part of it is actually the movement one is pretty simple. You can kind of just run, sprint. There is no tag sprint like there is in Call of Duty, which for me is a big win because it just simplifies to the simple idea of just moving around. I'm a fan of that. You can dive, and you can crouch, and you can go prone, and you can roll around on your back like you can do in Black Ops 6 on Call of Duty. The movement is pretty simple, and with the movement being so simple, it kind of reflects back on what it was like playing a first-person shooter back in, say, like the PS3 or the Xbox 360 days. That's the kind of movement it is. It's obviously not as fast as Call of Duty Black Ops 6's movement, but it's also not as slow as Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2's movement that we got, a few years ago. It's kind of a nice in-between, I would say. Coming from a Call of Duty standpoint, the servers on Battlefield 6 feel very, very good as opposed to whatever servers we get on Warzone, which are somewhat horrendous. I have had no problems at all with the servers, other than a few queues trying to get on the beta here and there, but for the most part, very good. And the last thing about the good parts of the gameplay for me is that I haven't really spent much time in vehicles, but for the most part, they seem overpowered as they always have done on Battlefield, which is what you want because, well, Battlefield is all about the vehicles and all about the destruction and stuff like that, so that's a win. Now for some of the gameplay elements that I think could be tweaked a bit. I mentioned that movement is good and bad. The bad parts for the movement is that it kind of feels clunky in places. When it comes to diving and getting back up, or even diving in general, or sort of mantling over objects, or even kind of like moving around slightly, there is a clunky feel to it as opposed to the Omni movement that we do have in Black Ops 6, which is not polished fully, but it is a lot more fluid than what we have in Battlefield 6. So I do think there needs to be some tweaks to movement. I don't know what it needs to be necessarily. Maybe it's just some faster mantling speeds or faster like movement speeds to get up off the ground. I think that would help it a bit. It's not a million miles away though from being very good though. And there's a few balancing issues that need to be addressed for me. First of all, the assault class, you can actually have 2 primary weapons on that. And one that is default on the beta is a shotgun as part of this class. And well, this shotgun is just so unbelievably broken, especially at close range. Now, I know there's a close range meta there for a reason, but this shotgun, there's nothing you can do about it. It just annihilates, basically. So I think that needs addressing before the final game drops. And also, ammo. For some reason, if you load in with an assault rifle, say 30 rounds, you only get 2 stock mags after that. So there's only like 60 rounds in reserve. And trying to find someone who's playing support to drop ammo on this game, it's just a nightmare. I think you need more starting ammo going forward. Now, a key part of a Battlefield game is obviously its maps. Battlefield is renowned for its big maps and destructive environments, and Battlefield 6 obviously has them. However, out of the 3 big maps that we've got on the beta for Conquest, only Liberation Peak feels like a traditional Battlefield map. The other 2 maps kind of very much feel like Call of Duty maps, and I don't know if that's because this game is obviously trying to very much siphon off a big chunk of Call of Duty's audience, so it's trying to play more to that, but they're very much urban environments, they're very much close quarter environments, and there's not really the Battlefield feel to them that you would expect with traditional Battlefield games. I'm all for games trying new things, but I feel like we should have really had 2 very, very good Battlefield-esque maps in this beta and 1 close quarters one, maybe like Siege of Cairo or something like that, alongside 2 traditional Battlefield maps, if you know what I mean. And because these maps are very close quarters and there's obviously a lot going on because it's Battlefield in terms of destruction and stuff like that, visibility is very, very poor at times. I've seen parts of the map where I'm getting sort of bright lights blinding me. Other times, obviously, because of the destruction, all the smoke and dust, you literally can't see a thing. And I feel like it needs tweaking ever so slightly ahead of the final release. And the last part of the gameplay that I kind of really want them to improve is audio. No matter what settings I'm using, I feel like the audio is just very, 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 very inconsistent. It feels like footsteps kind of just don't exist. You could probably play this game and still drop a decent amount of kills with it, just the old school way by blaring the volume out of your TV, because audio just doesn't really exist. There is so much going on, and I get that it's meant to be like a Warzone and Battlefield and stuff like that. I understand that, but because there's so much going on, the audio that really matters, i.e. footsteps, well, it doesn't exist, basically. And it's probably on par with how bad Warzone's footstep audio is. And, well, that's pretty bad. Now, I know this is a beta, so it's hard to, like, tell. But bugs have plagued Battlefield launchers in recent years. I'm looking at you, Battlefield 2042. I haven't really come across too many bugs in this game. However, there is one bug that is actually really, really annoying me somewhat, is that sometimes when I go to change class in game, so say I'm sniping at first and I want to switch to like an assault rifle, I do that and then it makes my gun disappear fully, and I can't get my gun back at all, no matter how many times I pick up maybe someone else's class or I try to change class again. My gun just doesn't come back, which is really odd, first of all. Even when I aim down sight, it's just not there. And then, because this bug happens, it then kind of breaks the game in other ways, so I don't really get any ambient noise, or when I'm going to respawn, I don't get any noise from the menu or anything like that. And then, for some reason, it also doesn't let me back out of the game fully either to fix this bug, meaning I've actually got to force close the game and then relaunch the full game to actually get out of it and fix it. So that will need addressing coming the launch, because if you're going to have this game, you know, launched for £70 or $70, whatever it is, and then you're going to get game-breaking bugs like that, well, might be a bit of a problem. Now, it's worth noting that over the course of this first beta weekend, I've actually been working quite a bit, so I haven't really had the opportunity to properly sink my teeth into this game. But one of the last things I want to touch on is this game's UI. Now, where to start with this? I didn't think that a game could have a worse UI than Modern Warfare 2 back in 2022. That game's UI was horrendous. However, step forward Battlefield 6. This game's UI is disastrously bad. The settings are a total minefield, for one, especially controller settings and trying to rebind keys or, you know, just flip trigger buttons and stuff like that. It's an absolute minefield to navigate, and it takes way too long to navigate, as opposed to literally just finding a button, pressing it, and it does what you want it to do. For me, the fact that this game is coming after Call of Duty's somewhat casual player base, you're going to have settings that are somewhat easy to understand. And the fact of the matter is, Battlefield's settings aren't easy to understand, and its UI also isn't easy to understand. And for the most part, this has got potential to pull people off, because if they can't just find a game easy, or they can't navigate to a weapon customization easy, or they can't navigate to a loadout section easy, or they can't just change settings easily, then people are going to go, I'm not going to play it. I'm going to go move on to something else, something that's simpler, something that's just enjoyable. So for me, I know we're 2 months out from launch. However, the UI is probably set in stone. Could be a bit of an issue. Overall, is it worth pre-ordering and buying? Well, first of all, the golden rule about Battlefield is never pre-order, especially after the last few launches and how broken they've been. Stick by that rule. Is it worth buying? For me, I don't think I would buy it. I think if it was free to play on Battle Pass, I would enjoy playing it. But would I buy it? Not at the moment, but at the same time, we haven't fully seen what Call of Duty is going to give us this year. Obviously, we know it's going to be Black Ops 7, and we know it's going to be a sequel to Black Ops 2, so it's going to be set in a near-distant future, as opposed to Battlefield 6's modern setting. But for now, I'm not fully blown away by it. I will say that. It's good, it's fun, it's different, it's enjoyable, and the gameplay feels very good. But am I like, I need to play this, I need to play this, I need to play this? No. I'm not, and I don't know if that's just because I'm getting older or whatever, but I'm not, like, desperate to jump on this game. I've seen loads of content creators big this game up and say Call of Duty's in trouble, and Call of Duty's this, and Battlefield 6 is this, and I get it. There's a lot of hype surrounding this game right now, but I would just wait off to see what the final product is like, for one, and two, this is also just a multiplayer beta. I'd be very, very interested on seeing more details on how the Battle Royale is going to play, because for the most part these days, I am a Battle Royale player as opposed to a multiplayer player. But we will see how it goes at launch. I am excited to see what some of the other bigger maps are like at launch. So if it is on Game Pass, then you can guarantee that on launch day, I will no doubt be sat playing it. And if it was to blow me away, then I will probably consider buying it in case it ever was taken off the Game Pass. But if nothing else, this beta is actually proof that Battlefield 6 has an incredibly solid starting point. And if this is what the beta is like, the full game and the full release could be very, very, very good. Should Call of Duty be worried? Possibly. I guess time will tell. Let me know your thoughts on the Battlefield 6 beta. Have you been playing it? Are you waiting until next weekend to play it? What would you like to change? What would you like to see implemented into the game? What are you enjoying about it? And I will catch you all in the next one.